Hello, I'm Jillian. Thank you for joining me. The right to not wear a mask in public during this coronavirus pandemic is typically offered as a political and legal argument. But politics and the law serve a higher purpose, human flourishing. And human flourishing is argued in the moral arena, where the priorities are to promote the welfare, well-being, and dignity of all, to avoid causing harm to others, to pursue good over bad, right over wrong, and virtue over vice, and to attend to moral values like fairness, compassion, integrity, respect, responsibility, and courage, to name only a few. Normative moral theories advise and guide us in this. They tell us what we ought to do, how we ought to conduct ourselves, behave, and interact with others, what choices we ought to consider, and what decisions we ought to make. While the argument to not wear a mask may be reasonable in the political and legal arenas, it fails in the moral arena. Three normative moral theories are relevant in making this judgment: deontology, consequentialism, and virtue ethics. Deontology is objectively focused on an act or action. The morally correct course of action is one that coincides with and enables us to fulfill our duties, responsibilities, and obligations. These may be expressed as rules, regulations, procedures, standards of practice, policy, and law as they apply to particular circumstances or more broadly to the society in which we live. Where there is policy or other regarding the wearing of masks, it is morally correct to wear a mask, and wear it properly, I might add. But the absence of policy or other does not mean it is morally correct to avoid wearing a mask. Consequentialism represents a group of theories that focus on the potential consequences or outcomes of an act, action, behavior, choice, or decision. It is morally correct to maximize potential good consequences and outcomes over those which may be bad. The most well-known consequentialist theory is utilitarianism, which promotes maximizing the amount of good for the most people. There is more potential good than bad in wearing a mask for the greatest number of people. For example, slowing the spread of COVID and the flu, and minimizing the viral load one might be exposed to. The potential harm of wearing a mask for most people is inconvenience and discomfort. Therefore, it is morally correct to wear a mask in a consequentialist tradition. Virtue ethics focuses on one's character. Character is the sum of traits like honesty, respect, fairness, trustworthiness, courage, diligence, patience, and many others, as well as those considered undesirable. This theory proposes that a person of good character behaves in ways that are good and right, and a person who behaves in ways that are good and right is a person of good character. And then, of course, the reverse regarding bad character and bad and wrong behaviors is also true. In this tradition, it is morally correct to cultivate, practice, and perform positive character traits and to avoid the negative ones. Wearing a mask is caring, respectful, and responsible. Not wearing a mask is selfish, inconsiderate, and unsympathetic. Therefore, it is morally correct to wear a mask according to virtue ethics. While each theory on its own is informative, each also has limitations. Deontology doesn't consider or address contextual and circumstantial factors. Consequentialism relies on assumptions, projections, and best guesses, and virtue ethics invites internal contradictions when, for example, honesty and loyalty and equality and equity are in conflict. Therefore, most of us employ a pluralistic ethical framework in our daily lives. In other words, we consciously or subconsciously consider our options in regard to more than one normative theory. Our capacity to do this doesn't rely on theoretical knowledge or philosophical knowledge, but on social and emotional maturity and moral wisdom, which are nurtured by influential adults who help us learn, grow, and develop throughout childhood and adolescence. While you might argue the specifics of my analysis, normative morality is overwhelmingly advising and guiding us to wear a mask in public during this pandemic. Not wearing a mask in public, or intentionally not wearing one correctly, is a moral failing that is compromising human flourishing. I believe the political and legal arguments used to justify not wearing masks in public should be reframed as moral arguments, because in the moral arena, they are exposed for how bad, wrong, and incorrect they are.